Hello, we are live on Saturday morning for the opening weekend of college football kickoff. It is myself, Eric Froton at CF Froton on Twitter, and my co-host, Mike Bainbridge, purveyor of the CFF site. We are here to talk about all the relevant happenings in Saturday morning. As we know, things break quickly and you have to react to them. So that's why we're going to be doing this associated with BetSperts for the season so that we can make sure we cover everything in the morning and you can get to all the relevant betting things that we're going to be discussing. So without any further ado, we're going to handle some of the late injury news and how that will at least affect our lineups and the wagers. First on tap, Treylon Burks been injured pretty much all camp. Everybody's been talking about it. We've heard reports out recently, that he's going to be playing. He said it declaratively, I will be playing. That being said, they're playing an FCS team that not an FCS, they're playing Rice, which they're expected to obviously be considerable favorites in. Mike, do you have any opinion on how Treylon will be affecting that game?
Well, they're a 2-touchdown favorite. So, he said definitively, as you mentioned this week, that he's going to play this week. How much as a 2-touchdown favorite or more than 2-touchdown favorite? It's TBD. So we've been suggesting to our subscribers at the CFF site to sit Treylon Burks this week, just because we've learned in the past to not want to risk starting a player that has sat for most of camp. And then in the backfield, in addition to Treylon, we got, in addition to Treylon Burks, Treylon Smith. Sorry, I'm getting my Treylons mixed up. Treylon Smith in the backfield also nicked up, has had a turf toe for much of camp. So he's, I would assume, a game time decision this week. So another spot that we need to monitor for Arkansas.
Yeah, absolutely. And with his backup being a very highly touted freshman, Raheem Rocket Sanders, we hear him all over camp. He's hitting big runs. He's an explosive player. He is listed as running back 2 on that Arkansas depth chart. If Treylon Smith cannot go, the running back Treylon, I think you could see some big numbers out of Raheem Sanders today, and that will certainly be something that you will want to monitor as kickoff approaches. Next, we have USC, their depth chart released. Gary Bryant, injured. He will not be playing. He had a hamstring all throughout camp. Apparently, it was a COVID potential contact tracing issue, so it'll be 1 week, might not be 2. In his place, Joseph Manjack, freshman, 6'2", big receiver, manning the slot role that we saw Drake London the past few years have extreme success in. London's obviously splitting out wide. He'll be taking that Michael Pittman, Amon-Ra St. Brown X role in Graham Harrell's offense. But what do you see in terms of the other wide receivers that you'll be targeting from USC, given the depth chart uncertainty?
Yeah, I think, Drake London is going to be the alpha of that group. He was a little nicked up this past week. I believe he left practice for a brief moment, then returned. So we have to watch monitor his injury status as today goes along to make sure that he plays, and I believe he'll play. Taj Washington, the Memphis transfer, will start opposite London. And this is a USC offense that does not run the ball that much. And we've seen in the past where upwards of 2 or 3 receivers in the system get 80 plus targets in a season. So I'm not sure what to expect out of the freshman, who was a surprise to, I think, all of us on the depth chart. But as long as Drake London plays, I think you're going to see both him and Taj Washington just peppered with targets.
Absolutely. And I mean, if you're looking in CFF lineups or DFS, there's certainly, obviously you're going to have London everywhere. You can't really sit them out. And they're playing a team in San Jose State that went undefeated in the Mountain West last year. So they don't have a patsy that they're going up against. And they're going to have to actually respect, a similar offense, San Jose State. They run the air raid as well. So you can see a lot of passing in that game, which means any incompletion, the clock stopping, you're probably going to get more plays. Might see in the 70 to 75 range for each team, which would be wonderful, because that means that's just more targets for each of these players that we're talking about. Manjack could really that's interesting seeing him, because he got a little bit of buzz in camp, but he was a relative unknown until he topped the depth chart. We'll see what it is, but he could be a good value play down the line. As far as Mississippi State, we have Malik Heath suspended. Very interesting here, because he was listed as a starter on the depth chart. obviously, gosh, we know how it is with Mike Leach in his depth charts. You don't really know until you get out there. He runs 2 lines of 4 wide receivers. So, you have plenty of bodies rolling out. How do you think that affects the outlook for Mississippi State, their fantasy as well as their other outlook?
Yeah, he's not officially suspended just yet. But as we saw let's kick it back to the bowl game last year where Malik Heath decided to karate kick one of the Tulsa players at the end of the bowl game to start that brawl. There's no official suspensions yet, but the Tulsa players, there was multiple players that were suspended prior to their game earlier this week. So I expect Malik Heath to be one of possibly multiple players to get suspended. I would anticipate that's announced before game time. As you said, between 8 and 9 receivers on any game day get targets in a Mike Leach offense. I think, we'll touch on this a little bit later, but there's a couple value plays that are going to get smashed, I think, in DFS. But Makai Polk, a California transfer, is one name to watch who could step in on that outside role where Malik Heath would be.
Certainly. And gosh, with Jaden Walley being listed as the number 2 wide receiver in that depth chart, quite a surprise considering he was the leader. That was quite obviously something that we didn't expect. You should see his value obviously increase. He obviously got Makai Polk. Obviously, Jameer Calvin was another surprise starter sort of on the inside there. So, obviously you want to keep tabs on what's going on with Mississippi State. They're playing Louisiana Tech, which is a nice spot for him there. Moving on to sides here. Lane Kiffin just announced this morning that he has COVID and he will not be traveling with the team to play Louisville. So with him not on the sidelines, and you have Jeff Lebby, offensive coordinator, formerly OC of UCF for 2 years before heading over to Mississippi. Do you think that affects any of your outlook on this game or, any of the players we're looking at?
Yeah, not really. I would assume at this point in the week where Ole Miss has got most of the game plan already in place. They've had all summer to get prepared for their opening week matchup with Louisville. And I know that Lane Kiffin is, kind of considered this offensive guru, but Jeff Lebby really does run that offense. So Kiffin not being present for this game does not affect my opinion on the eventual outcome.
Yeah, absolutely. And it opened up at -8 in terms of that game shaded to Ole Miss. It is now at -10 at the time of press. So I liked it. I took it at -8. I have no problem with taking it at -10. You're talking about a Mississippi team that's running 80 plays a game last year. It was second most in the country, 556 yards, 39 points, 7.1 yards per play. You're talking about, a well-oiled machine. As you said, Jeff Lebby's doing his thing. They return 8 starters. Their offensive line, they turned over in 1 year. They have 4 returning starters. And it's one of the best in the SEC. Whereas Louisville is a team that loses 5 of its top 7 tacklers, lose Javian Hawkins, Tutu Atwell, Des Fitzpatrick, all NFL draft choices, which are their core of their skill position players. And they played a much slower pace, 102nd in terms of play of pace behind Scott Satterfield. So when you're talking about a team that, doesn't throw well, Malik Cunningham, in terms of top 10, in terms of turnover ratio for the team in general, if they get down, I think you're going to see them have to play catch up. And that's a bad spot for them to be throwing the ball wantonly with not a lot of skill position players to pick up the slack. As far as other games that we're seeing here, I happen to like Georgia Tech over Northern Illinois. That's a -18. I just think that's a kill spot with Northern Illinois 0-6 in MAC play last year. Sorry, Mike. What are some of your plays that you like?
Yeah, I do like, we talked about the injuries with Arkansas. We expect Treylon Burks to play, a little iffy on the running back situation, but I do like the under there at 49.5. Rice gets 8 of their 9 top tacklers back from last year. We know under Mike Bloomgren, their head coach, that they love just a slow plodding pace. They're running the ball 60% of the time. And then just, with the injuries on the Arkansas side, you got a new quarterback in KJ Jefferson who started 2 games last year, but this is a relatively green quarterback. I think we could be looking at the under here with the 2 teams that really want to establish the run.
Nice. Well, that's a pretty strong play. I can't deny that as well. Sounds good, especially with, Rice having uncertainty at the cornerback position. They transferred Luke McCaffrey, but he didn't end up getting the gig, at least not yet. We'll certainly see about that. going to have problems scoring points against an SEC defense in Arkansas, especially year to Sam Pittman.
Yeah, and then I like Marshall -2.5 over Navy. If you remember Navy last year, they were infamous for getting throttled by BYU in the opener when they weren't using pads in practice. I don't think that's the case this year. At least I would hope not. But yeah, Marshall returns an experienced quarterback in Grant Wells. They did have a head coaching change, but some consistency with the offensive coordinator. So the system, offensive system shouldn't change too much. And I like the returning talent of Marshall this year. They got the best talent, I would think, in Conference USA. And I took them, I hammered 2.5 over Navy.
Yeah, a lot of uncertainty on that Navy offense. Only 5 returning starters, I want to say. And that's really not typical of a Navy team, especially where everyone else is so experienced. Moving on to the DFS side of the ball, we're going to go through our slates. We're going to go through the main slate as well as the evening slate. I'm going to go through 2 players that are our core players as well as a couple of bargain bin guys, which is what everybody likes. As far as myself, I really like Kennedy Brooks in the main slate, $5,900. He's 16th in terms of price. And when it comes to that Oklahoma running back situation, it's Kennedy Brooks and it's Eric Gray. And there's not another scholarship runner on that roster because you had Seth McGowan and Marcus Major. McGowan dismissed, Major ineligible. I just think that against Tulane, they're going to have the opportunity to hit some home runs. Kennedy Brooks, 2,000-yard seasons. We still haven't – those two should get the absolute – it should be a P. Ryan Mixon situation with the two of them all year long. So I really like him at the discount, about $1,000 less than what Mr. Gray is. I also like Bryce Young for Alabama as a core guy. There aren't a lot of sexy quarterbacks in this main slate that I can really get behind. Bryce Young's over-under is 313 yards passing. I think you're going to see that well-oiled machine that is Alabama, even though they're getting acculturated and bringing some new players in. Bryce Young had an apprenticeship year. I feel very confident about him in terms of a building block. Mike, any thoughts in terms of your bargain bin or anybody in the main slate you'd like to highlight?
Yeah, I kind of cheated here. I really love the running backs in this slate. It's really top heavy at quarterback, and there's a ton of bargain bin options at receiver this week. So I really wanted to hammer the running backs. Looking right at the top, you got a couple of workhorses, Letty Brown, Austin Jones, who are going to get 25 touches a game. You get personal favorite of mine, as you know, Bijan Robinson. I would caution a little bit there. It's going to be close to 100 degrees in Austin this week. So I was just reading a little bit on it. I'm not sure that we're going to see 20 carries this week from Bijan, just to kind of, with the heat they want, and they like their depth in the backfields. But as you know, Bijan, 8 yards a carry. He can break one at any moment. And then even down the list, you can get value plays with Deuce Vaughn. I like Tyler Goodson at Iowa. They're going to feed him the rock. Hassan Haskins, even at Michigan. I think he's facing a Western Michigan defense that's not very good. He can rumble into the end zone for 2 touchdowns. So I really tried to hammer the running back position.
Yeah, absolutely. There's great value there. No doubt about it. In fact, there isn't as much value I find in that late slate. So we'll get to that. As far as my bargain bin, Rasheen Ali, heard all about him in camp. He had been running pretty much even with Sheldon Evans, but when it came to who the new coaching staff in Marshall was the most excited about, you kept hearing his name come out. And sincerely, at $3,300, I think that there's real big game potential. As you mentioned, Mike likes Marshall over Navy, and I do as well. I think you could see Rasheen Ali really, really carve out and own that running back situation. Also, with Theo Weiss being injured for Oklahoma, Mario Williams is $3,000, a minimum bid. If anybody watched the spring game, he was an absolute superstar. The kid's electric, one of the top receivers of this year's class. And at $3,000 a minimum shot, he was already listed on the depth chart as a co-starter alongside Mike Woods. So where they'll probably be having their way with Tulane, you're going to see a lot of the younger guys getting reps in that game. I love Mario Williams. Also as another shot, $4,000 for JoJo Earl. He's the co-starter with Slade Bolden in the slot for Alabama. You could see some serious work out of him. And DJ Matthews for Indiana. What a great deal. He's playing that slot role. I know you like him, Mike, because Walt Fallayer got 100 targets or was on pace to do that last year before the pandemic. He could be in a great spot since he does have the starting interior role there. Who are some of your favorite bargain bins?
Yeah, I love the DJ Matthews call. I mean, it's not just last year with WAP. I mean, it's gone back 3 or 4 years where the slot role gets 100 targets every single season. You can't throw it to Ty Freifogel every time. So I do like DJ Matthews this week as a value play. 2 guys I named, Makai Polk. I already mentioned him earlier this week in the show with Malik Heath expected to be suspended for this game. I would say, Malik Heath Makai Polk will be the primary beneficiary of that. He was arguably the best receiver that Mississippi State had during fall camp. And then another one is, and I hate to stick with the homerism, the Michigan theme, but Blake Corum really was the talk of not only the spring, but fall camp for Michigan. Not always a lot to talk about with the Wolverines in the football program, but Corum is he'll split time with Hassan Haskins, but he's gonna be utilized in the passing game a little bit more, and he's rocked up this this offseason adding weight, so I could see between 10 and 12 touches for him, and that could easily pay off at 3,600.
Yeah, it's funny. I was seriously considering Blake Corum as well, but I was thinking that's Mike's house. He's a Michigan guy. So I better defer to you on that. But I sincerely do like Blake Corum a lot. And as you mentioned with Makai Polk, that's some great info on Heath because that's not really out there that much. So I'm glad we got to table it. That's something that isn't being talked about. And like I said, he was number 1 on the depth chart.
Yeah, I should specify it is not official as of now. I haven't checked Twitter, but that is the expected decision for him to be out this week.
Sounds good. In terms of the evening play, I got my 2 core plays. DJ Uiagalelei is $6,300. And when you look at the rest of the quarterbacks in that slate, it sticks out like a sore thumb. I mean, you can't miss it. $6,300, great value. Sure, they're playing Georgia's Georgia, and they have one of the most talented elite defenses in the country. But we saw DJ against a pretty darn good Notre Dame defense last year. First reps. Didn't have, he was first year on campus, takes over for Trevor, just gets 1 week of reps, and he goes out and he looked great. So I'm not as concerned about that. I think the juice is worth the squeeze. That $6,300. At $4,700, I love Zeriah Beason. Trey Bradford, $6,900. Tyjon Lindsey, $6,500. You're getting a precipitous discount from a player that in camp is considered buzz-wise to be the best receiver in camp, and they think that he could eventually be that strong wide receiver 1 type that they didn't have last year after they lost Isaiah Hodgins. So I think at $4,700, it's just such a smoking deal that you want to build around that. Who are some of your favorite core players for the night slate?
Yeah, I love the quarterbacks here. Emory Jones, I think, is a smash this week against Florida Atlantic. We're not going to see the same Florida offense that we saw a year ago, and Dan Mullen is known for morphing his style of play to his talent. And with Emory Jones, you're going to get a running quarterback who's going to see, between 10 and 15 carries every single week. Passing leaves a little bit to be desired, but I mean, look back at Mississippi State. Nick Fitzgerald, top 5 fantasy quarterback. Wasn't very good, not on an NFL roster if I don't believe. So, do you have to be a great quarterback to succeed and put up fantasy points? No. So I really want to get Emory Jones in my lineup, get those 10 to 15 carries plus his passing stats. I think he's in for a big week. And then I absolutely want to stack the LSU passing game this week. Fairly underpriced. They have a new offensive coordinator who's supposed to emulate the Joe Brady offense that was so successful a couple of years ago. We have some clarity at quarterback with Max Johnson. He's not going to split reps with anybody. It's his job. Keishawn Butte, a star wide receiver, our number 2 wide receiver in college fantasy. I think he is a smash play this week, and I want to stack that LSU passing game with some question marks at running back. I think they'll chuck it around between 30 and 35 times today. Implied total of 33. I think we could be looking at a good output.
Absolutely, and I will get to that LSU passing offense when we come to the props section as well. All about it. My bargain bins, Sir Roderick Thompson for Texas Tech is very questionable to play. He's been limited all throughout camp. If he doesn't play, you could look for Xavier White at $3,500 to take over the lion's share of that work. And he's a passing back. So that's even better for me because you get those free PPR points and you get him out in space a little bit where he has a chance to really create. And he excelled in that role last year. So I think that's a nice little low price play. Also, with Oklahoma State playing Missouri State and coming out there with a 4 running back depth chart, number 2, Dezmon Jackson is the minimum of $3,000. He was listed as number 2 back. He was excellent last year when LD Brown went down, had some monster games. I think you could see Dezmon Jackson really put up some numbers against a soft game against Missouri State where they're definitely going to be working everybody through, and you could definitely break along with it. At a minimum price, why not? Moving on to the prop bets. We'll go with Prize Picks to start out, our sponsor. Couple of real good ones here that I like. Temple released their depth chart this week. Ramon Bonner was nowhere to be found on it. He wasn't on it. That's not a good sign for a redshirt senior when you have sophomores and freshmen, jumping you in the queue. But with him at 52.5 against Rutgers, which with Greg Schiano was a much better defense than it was in 2018, 2019. You saw Rutgers bow up against some good Big Ten teams last season. They're going to come there against a retooling Temple team with a starting quarterback. I think they're going to run them out. I don't like that Ramon Bonner play at all, and it's a great deal. If he even gets one snap, you're good.
Yeah.
James Cook, 42.5 under rush. As we see with James Cook, he's the third down back for Georgia. He was listed. Obviously, you have Zeriah White. He's going to have his 15-ish carries per game. But then there's also Kendall Milton, who is back healthy, and he runs violently and is, frankly, the best running back in that room. I think he gets a lot of work against Clemson where James Cook will be used in a passing down setting. And when he is, we're not talking about his passing production. We're not talking about his fantasy points. We're talking about his rushing yards. And 42.5, that's a tall order behind, 2 primary rushing backs. Lastly, as you mentioned with the USC situation, Mike, they don't pass the ball very much. They pass the ball all the time. They do not run the ball very much. When they came out with their depth chart, Vav Malapei was listed as the 1. Keaontay Ingram had been injured for the past couple of weeks. He just now is returning to practice. We don't know what level of practice is, but he is practicing. He's listed as the number 2, and then you obviously have Keenan Christian, potentially Darren Waller, who's also banged up. You have a very crowded running back room. You have a situation where you have an unsettled depth chart. You also have Keaontay Ingram, previously injured, now in second position. All those factors that we've seen in the previous games when you have an unsettled depth chart, all those coming together, that's a kill play. Big spot. Love the Keaontay Ingram under. What are you on, Michael, for Prize Picks?
Yeah, just to add real quick to your Ramon Bonner, he was questionable as of Thursday to play. The hope from Rod Carey, the Temple head coach, is that he will play this week. But as you said, he's not listed on the depth chart. Edward Sadie is the top back. He was the top back in the spring, again, the top back in the fall. So just need 1 carry out of Bonner this week. So I love that play. As for me, a little risky here, but I like the Breece Hall under at 133.5. If you look back 2 years ago, the last time that Iowa State was this big of a favorite, no running back for Iowa State had more than 9 carries that day. They know this is Breece Hall's last year, probably want to look at some of the backups. They got Jairo Brock, inexperienced backup, and two freshmen there. So it's a dicey play, admittedly, but I like for them to kind of distribute the carries, see what they have at running back. I don't think there's any risk to potentially risk Breece Hall to injury. So I think the one under 133.5 is the play there. The other one I like, over for Cade McNamara, the Michigan quarterback, at 197.5. At the CFF site, we have McNamara projected at 244 passing yards this week. Western Michigan, as I mentioned earlier, not very good on defense. I think Cade McNamara is a good bet to get at least 200 yards this week through the air. I like his receivers with Ronnie Bell, Cornelius Johnson. So, and I think Western Michigan has the offense where they can push Michigan a little bit, where they're going to have to score some points. So definitely like the over there at 197.5.
Yeah, they gave up 34 points per game in a MAC-only schedule last year, Western Michigan. So I don't like how they fare against the big boys in state. at Michigan. And, the Wolverines are lucky to have your fandom, Mike. Cade McNamara appreciates it. A couple to wrap up here. We got a few minutes left since we have time. I have an incredible bet this morning. I just went and put my column out. If you look on Twitter, my player props column is out. Joseph Ngata, 70.5 receiving yards on PointsBet is absolutely shocking to me. Almost fell off the couch when I was reading that. We're talking about a guy, he's career high of 62, second career high of 48. Got 7 passes for 85 yards in 6 games last year. He was hurt most of last year, and he missed a couple of weeks in camp with a hamstring injury. You got Ladson. You got E.J. Williams, who's looked great in camp. Justin Ross is back. You got the Collins boys. You got Ajo. You have a loaded room in a tough game against Georgia here. 70.5 yards for Joseph Ngata, considering he's never done it in 19 games before. I'm sorry. I'm calling it. No way. Big underplay. Any thoughts on that, Michael?
Not on that one, but I don't know if you were looking at our Twitter comments earlier today, but somebody suggested on DraftKings a underplay of 54.5 from Indiana running back Tim Baldwin. I know you're going to hammer that one because Tim Baldwin, the RB2 currently behind USC transfer Stephen Carr, facing a really good Iowa defense. And Indiana was one of the worst rushing teams, not only in the Big Ten last year, but in the country. So you're getting 54.5 for an RB2 for a terrible rush offense. I want that play.
That's a straight red alert. Yeah, I responded with the red alert, blinking, flashing lights on that one. Get it now. You got an hour. Get on that. Lastly, Max Johnson on DraftKings, 235.5 yards passing. This is a line that's looking backwards. This is not a line that's looking forward and where you're looking and say, okay, what's going to happen? They looked at the first 3 games where he was a true freshman, came in against Auburn, Texas A&M, and I forget the other, maybe Alabama, and 3 legitimate SEC defenses. And what are you going to do? He threw for 172 yards tops. Then he pivoted and started the last 2 games, led an upset over Florida, led an upset over Mississippi where he threw for over 400 yards, okay? He's had a full off season. There's nobody looking over his shoulder. He's got an absolutely loaded set of wide receivers. He's going up against a UCLA team that allowed 272 yards passing per game last year, 313 the year before. This is not Hawaii, okay? They're coming. That's a big, big overplay. Love it. That's going to wrap it up for us. If you want the conversation to keep going, the CFF site, which Mike is obviously the purveyor of, does a Discord channel, and it's incredible. There's only over 600 people in there, I believe, right now as it is, and everything. It's every Saturday, constantly, one after another, all the news, all the depth charts, every team page. It's got everything, and it's an amazing community. So if you're looking for that late-breaking news, you're looking for that edge, and you don't like how Twitter, you have to search, bang, everything is right there in that Discord channel. It's sincere. It's one of the best things that I've found about the internet. I love it. Mike. And
it's I thank you for that promotion. It's become a community at this point. Everybody's willing to share their sides for bets, their DFS picks. They're willing to share any lineup information and late breaking news that will come about. So again, thank you for that promotion of our Discord channel.
Absolutely, and shout out to the All-Stars at Didino. You know Didino. Did I tell you? At CU Tigers, another All-Star, and of course, at Space Age Dragon. If you're ever up in the middle of the night and you need CFF news, Space Age Dragon will be there to talk to you on the Discord. I guarantee it. So we've got some real diehards in there. Hopefully you want to bring it over. I'm Eric Froton at CF Froton and NBC Sports Edge. Look for my props columns. He is Michael Bainbridge at M Bainbridge CFF and the CFF site. Enjoy your opening Saturday.